But first, shocking news today. This country is now at a critical tipping point because the Albanese government is worse than Whitlam and is now desperate with your money. It's finally seeing what I've warned since the day it was elected. Its green energy revolution, renewables everywhere, is a total failure and now faces total collapse. Much higher prices for our electricity, but more blackouts. The problem today, the madness, is that instead of admitting this and pulling back, Energy and Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen has announced he's going to go double or nothing. In fact, 500% harder with your money. He'll spend a lot more of it. But just how much? He won't tell you because you'd probably be horrified. Now, I can't tell you how catastrophic this could be for jobs, for businesses and for your power bills, because it was 3 weeks ago, of course, that Treasurer Jim Chalmers, he did first sound the alarm, warning that the government's plan to switch us to wind and solar power was actually heading over a cliff. All of its targets, you see, are shot.
We will need to do even more to secure sufficient renewable energy generation, transmission and storage to meet our ambitions.
And 2 days ago, Chris Bowen agreed, but very grudgingly and in a euphemism, because this is all on him.
I'm pleased with the progress we've made so far, but far from satisfied.
Far from satisfied is a grotesque understatement. These are the government's promised targets for 2030. That's just 7 years from now. They were also mad at the time, and now the government sees they're hopeless. 82% of our electricity from wind and solar and other renewables. No expert I've heard now believes that's even remotely possible. The rollout is way behind. 43% emissions cuts, also behind. The target for electric cars, 89% of all new car sales by 2030. The government's transport department says they won't even get a third of that. And 10,000 kilometres new transmission wires to hook up all those new wind and solar plants. Again, way behind, often 2 or 3 times over budget, and facing massive community opposition to having these monstrosities over the landscape. So it's chaos. In fact, just it was yesterday, another huge blow to the government's renewable energy scheme. It keeps having these disasters. Chris Bowen has been banking, for instance, on green hydrogen, made from water, very expensive, but a scheme touted by green billionaire Twiggy Forrest to cut her emissions.
That's green hydrogen, the purest source of energy in the world, and one that could replace up to 3/4 of global emissions.
In fact, Andrew Forrest has just canned a promised power plant in Port Kembla that he said would use green hydrogen and gas. One that the federal government actually gave $30 million to 2 years ago. That was the Morrison government then. So I tell you, forget green hydrogen for a long time, if ever. The government's renewable energy plans are a disaster everywhere you look. But the government's response today, use more of your money to underwrite a 5-fold increase in new wind and solar capacity and pumped hydro. All of it backed by the government too. It's your money at risk, subsidising green billionaires like Forrest and other green energy carpetbaggers.
We say to renewable energy developers, the minimum price you need guaranteed, the price over which you'll share your return, make a return to the government, to the taxpayer, and again they put in their bids and the best bids win. We need to get to 82% renewables.
And all of this to reach Labor's crazy promise to get to 82% renewables by 2030. All that extra money to reach a target that the government's own solicitors have now admitted in court will not change the climate anyway. Not in any ways you'd notice, because we're just too small. But how much money will this take just to do that? Bowen today refused to say, out of embarrassment, I reckon.
Can you level with the Australian public and tell us how much it will cost?
Well, it's an auction, PK. Now, when you're putting a house on the market, you don't issue a press release saying this is what we expect to get.
You couldn't even get that right. Someone should tell Bowen that people selling houses do actually announce a set reserve price, and do tell buyers the estimated price range, okay? But Bowen will not tell you how many more billions of dollars of your money this government is now going to waste to reach targets that actually make no difference anyway. Well, no difference to anything but your power bills, which are going up, and your electricity system, which is facing blackouts. This is going to be disaster, even bigger than The Voice, driven once again by Labor ideologues and dreamers who are totally blind to reality.